Well, hello everyone. I'm Russell Ray with Oklahoma CareerTech, and welcome to CareerTech Conversations, where we discuss the many ways CareerTech is breaking down barriers in education and giving students of all ages the skills they need to enter the workforce and make informed career choices. Our focus today is agriculture education and the FFA. Here today to guide us through our discussion is CareerTech's State Program Administrator for Ag Education and the State Advisor for FFA, Scott Nemecek. Scott, thank you so much for being here today.
You bet. I appreciate the opportunity.
You bet. Our conversation today is pretty timely. You recently returned from the National FFA convention. I think it was in Indianapolis. And Oklahoma FFA came home with a truckload of awards and recognitions. Can you tell us a little bit about these achievements that these students made during the convention and why Oklahoma represented so well?
Sure, we'd be glad to. I think a very successful convention trip, and with convention, it's an opportunity for students across the nation to come together and those state winners to compete in the various contests and that we have there and award applications and all. And we did have a very successful year. I'll kind of start off with the highlights. Yep. We had one of the 6 national officers that will serve over the 850,000 members of the National FFA for the upcoming year is Karsten Cantrell. Karsten's from Skytook.
Oh, wow.
She's a sophomore or junior here at Oklahoma State University, and she will spend the next year traveling across the United States representing FFA and even some foreign countries as well. Representing FFA, and then that will conclude at next year's convention. So that was the ending highlight at the last session, seeing Karsten get elected. A very nice and good young lady who's had a strong background in agriculture, but also in family history in that, and as well as just a testament to what hard work and perseverance will do to get to that point.
And so she was elected to be a national officer? Is that how it works?
So she's elected by the delegates, but there's actually a nominating committee that selects that person. There's a nine-member committee that does the selection process. Mm-hmm. They work through that, and those officers are slated and announced there, and then they are approved as a set.
That is a pretty distinct honor. I mean,
it is.
How many national officers has Oklahoma had in the past? I think I read somewhere she's like the 20th or 23rd national officer.
Yes, so she is the 23rd national officer.
Wow.
So I'm very pleased about that, and I did do a little history on that, and I think Oklahoma is about 5th or 6th in the number of national officers that we've had. We have the most number of national presidents, we have with 8. And so we've been very prominent in that level. As you mentioned earlier, Indianapolis, when we went to convention, I think it was well perceived that Oklahoma's name was called a lot, and I'm very, very pleased with that. In addition to Karsten, probably on the leadership side of things in the FFA organization, one of the most touted contests is the prepared public speaking contest. And that's where we also came out a winner on top with that, one in a long list. It's been a few years since we've had a national winner, but at the same time, we expect that when we go, because that's one of our toughest contests here in the state, and we know that we can compete on a national level. This year, Caleb Horn from Morrison, graduated from Morrison last year. He's one of our 8 state FFA officers this year, and Caleb went through 3 different rounds to get to that finals, and in my opinion, won it going away. And just a very great young man, a very good job of public speaking at a topic that's very timely, and also did a great job in answering those questions, very knowledgeable about the topic that he presented on.
Yeah, and I got a chance to meet Caleb at our board meeting the other day, and he is a great public speaker. And that's the interesting thing to me. I mean, these students are learning much more than ag education. They're prepared public speaking. That's a big time event for FFA.
Absolutely. It's one of our largest events in terms of participation, and one of those skills, I think, when we talk about skill development, those soft skills or employability skills, the ability to put your thoughts together and communicate those well. This was a prepared contest. We also had the 2nd place winner in the extemporaneous contest, and so both of those public speaking contests, we were very well represented. Those are the skills that students across, and we often highlight those winners, but I think the students that it makes the most difference for are those students who are participants in that contest who maybe never get their name called on stage anywhere or never get a plaque, but they've developed those skills either in a classroom or at a contest where they are able to translate that long term into the ability to present themselves in job interviews or to present themselves as salespersons or whatever career interest that they go into.
Well, we represented strong. I've seen some photos and actually some videos of the event, and it looked like the students and the entire FFA organization had a lot of fun at the convention recently.
Yeah, we want to do that. While we're on convention, I'll also mention there's what we call career development events, or CDEs, that are various areas. One of the long-standing traditions as far as FFA goes is what used to be called livestock judging. It's livestock evaluation contests. That's where a team of 4 members will judge and evaluate different classes of livestock and then give reasons that support their placings, to give back to that public speaking skill, to be able to present their reasons of why they placed those classes the way they did. And this year, Tuttle FFA was the national winner, and also the high individual came from Tuttle FFA as well. So we're very proud of them. Long tradition of that. Mr. McGill there is a great teacher who does a good job with those students, and we're very proud of the job that they did.
Well, we came away with a big haul, it sounds like, a lot of individual awards and team awards as well.
Yeah, and one of the newest areas I think we have is that's really growing at a rapid rate is the Agri-Science Fair. So we have that in the spring here in Oklahoma, and then our winners in all the divisions go on to national, and we have multiple national finalists, I think as many as almost any other state, if not the most of any state. But we had 5 national winners and numerous others that were in the top 10 nationally. And those 5 national winners, incidentally, were all from Stillwater FFA.
Really?
So they're to really be commended for that and the job that they did in that. And it's basically the Agri-Science Fair is very similar to just a science fair, but they're all ag-related topics. And so those students get an opportunity to research and explore their area of interest within the agricultural industry.
Well, it sounds like we got a lot to be proud of here in Oklahoma. Another thing to be real proud of is membership in FFA. I understand that membership has risen to a record high. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure, be glad to. And we are just getting in the total tallies, and we'll have some second semester ads after Christmas, but it looks like we're going to be just a slightly over 29,000, which is about 1,000 more than we've ever had historically.
Really?
And so we're very proud of that. And I think all of this, both the membership level as well as the successes we had on the national level, the successes we have here in the state, can be attributed to those teachers that are doing a great job out there in the classroom, I think, and the students that they have, preparing them, getting those students involved, exposing them to opportunities that can help them long term. I think that's the secret to all of it, is those quality teachers that we have out there.
Well, I was going to ask you about that, the rising membership. You know, you hear stories about farmers struggling every day. What does this rising membership and increasing interest, and as you said, a result of the teachers doing their job, reaching out to students, what does this say about the future of agriculture here in Oklahoma?
Well, I think the future of agriculture is very bright in Oklahoma and nationwide. I think there's challenges there. I think it has to be bright, otherwise we're all in trouble. And I think a lot of policies that are involved, a lot of political opinions and things that are involved in the ag industry and the decisions that are made policy-wise and otherwise are things that affect our farmers and ranchers, but they affect all those within the industry as well, because the agricultural industry has a very solid foundation in production. We're very proud of that here in Oklahoma and different parts of the nation as well, but also is impacted greatly by those who are involved in those allied industries that go along with the production part of agriculture.
Why do you think students are wanting to pursue this line of work? We were talking a little bit off air about how much money farmers make from a loaf of bread in the grocery store. It turns out to be 6 cents per loaf. And there are stories like that everywhere. Why do you think these students are pursuing this line of work? Is it because they want to affect change?
Well, I think that's a big part. I think maybe the thing to look at is that within our programs, we have opportunities for students to develop those employability skills, those soft skills. And so regardless of whether they stay in the agricultural industry or not, those are skills that are going to serve them well. And I think parents recognize that. I think school boards recognize that. I think the general public. We're very fortunate to have a foundation here for our FFA in Oklahoma that has not really let up in terms of donors and sponsors for our programs. And so they recognize the importance. And a lot of our students are being called on to fulfill the roles needed here in Oklahoma in workforce development. I don't want to shy away from that agriculture thing, though, because agriculture is a big part of our industry. And I think I just mentioned the agri-science fair, and there's a lot of things. Production agriculture is a very difficult thing to start out in unless you kind of inherit that through a family, or you have some abilities there to get started, because it's a very capital heavy, very asset heavy type of thing that you have to have in order to operate on a large scale to make a decent living at. So margins are pretty tight on that. So you have to have volume to be able to produce that, and that's difficult for someone to just start out in. Yep. But I think there are tons of opportunities, as we mentioned, in processing and marketing and all of the other associated industries that go along with the production part of ag. And I think there's opportunities there for students.
Let's talk about the opportunities. How wide-ranging are the opportunities? They can be office jobs. They can be field jobs.
Absolutely.
It's a wide range of opportunities.
Yeah, so obviously that kind of chain starts with production, but you also have, the processing, you have distribution and transportation, you have the marketing, and then you have the consumption as well. And so at all stages of that, it's important. Anything from transportation, we're facing truck driver issues and shortages. We need truck driver training for that, because there are many in Oklahoma, in the pork industry particularly. We are a top 10 state in pork production, and many of those hogs are born here, or farrowed here is a term we would use, and they're born here and then they're shipped out of state for finishing for market, and so that truck drivers are a necessity for that, and as well as all of our commodities that are produced. The transportation industry is very important. Processing, we learned during COVID how the just-in-time processing, sometimes that's very susceptible to some issues there, and it can cause a shortage. Even though there's not really a shortage, it does back up, and there's some issues there we learned from COVID, I think, that will enable us. Maybe there's more. Some of the money has been spent towards those processing facilities, meat processing, and trying to develop other alternatives for producers. More alternatives for producers to be able to get their products processed, so we can get those to consumers, so we can ensure that there is a safe and reliable food source.
Let me share some stats about Oklahoma when it comes to the agriculture industry. Oklahoma, we're the number one ag product in the state is beef cattle. Well, we have 5.2 million head of cattle here in Oklahoma, a lot more than we do people. Over 1 million acres of wheat is grown here in the state. Over 640,000 acres of cotton are planted in Oklahoma each year. 300,000 acres of corn is harvested in Oklahoma each year. 2.2 million pigs are raised in the state, and our peanut crop is valued at about $9 million a year. That's pretty impressive stuff.
Yeah, I think the total cash receipts is between $6 and $7 billion per year from the ag industry in Oklahoma.
A $7 billion a year industry.
Yeah, so it's a very important part of our economy. I've heard it said, I've never been able to fact check that exactly, but I've heard it said before that depending on the price of oil, we're either the number one or number two industry in Oklahoma. And so it's a very important part of our economy. And I think, the average consumer here in Oklahoma may not understand that. And that's another role of our programs in high schools across the state, is to help students learn about that agricultural industry and learn where their food comes from and how it's produced, and the reasons that things go on, because we do have a society we live in here that's used to be 3 to 4 generations removed from the farm. I think we're even further than that now, the average person. And so they don't really make that connection other than driving down the highway with what actually goes on in the ag industry at the production level, and the amount of capital it requires to get that done, and the volume it requires for farmers and ranchers to be able to do that. Small hobby farmers can do that, but if they're really serious about making a living from it, it takes a large volume to do that. A lot of times you hear the term big ag and a negative connotation. I would switch that around and say big ag is a necessity, because we have a big population to feed, and it takes lots of volume to be able to feed those folks.
And I think that's a big reason why we're doing this right here, to increase public awareness, to reach more students, to reach more parents that this is a great industry to be involved in, and that you can have a very lucrative, fulfilling career in the ag industry. Well, one of the things that you mentioned, the soft skills, and my grandpa was an ag instructor in Kiowa, Oklahoma, for years and years, and he focused on that a lot. He taught his students how to tie a tie.
Right.
And it just kind of goes to show how big a role ag instructors play in the lives of these these young students, and they were a part of his life throughout his whole life. And so those soft skills you learn a lot more than just agriculture.
Absolutely. Yeah, agriculture is the foundation of our program. It always needs to be, but there are those skills that go along with that, being able to present yourself, how to talk to people, how to learn from them, to tie to, what's appropriate dress when you're going for a certain event, and those kind of things that our ag teachers do on an everyday basis and teaching those students. And that's why the ag teacher is an extremely important part of that school, because they're more than just a classroom teacher. We have a 3-circle model of ag education that begins with the classroom. The other 2 circles are FFA and SAE, and all of those are integral parts of any program. And that ag teacher sees those students, and not just those students, but they also see parents and grandparents on a regular basis. They're heavily involved in the communities that they serve, and I think it goes much beyond that.
Yeah. Caleb Horn, the national winner in prepared public speaking, he learned that through FFA. If he decides not to do anything in agriculture, I have no doubt that he's going to be a tremendous success in whatever he chooses to do. So if a student is interested, or if parents are interested in getting their kids involved in a career in agriculture, kind of get a chance to explore their interests, what would you advise them to do? Where should they go?
Well, their first step is to start with their local high school to see if they have an ag ed program. We have programs in 366 school districts across the state of Oklahoma. We have 483 teachers that are doing that, and we have room to grow. But at the same time, I think that's the first step. If they're interested in agricultural education, to get a background in what the ag industry is in Oklahoma, the opportunities available for students, not just in the production part of ag, but in other parts of the ag industry, as well as anything that they do. We do believe that students that participate in ag education and FFA are very prepared for their future if they will get in and be involved in that. All the way from record-keeping skills, financial skills, to those soft employability skills, the ability, the work ethic. I think that, just to get someone to show up sometimes is an important thing for employers. And I think that's some things we're teaching our students still today.
Well, Scott, we really appreciate everything you and your staff does for the agriculture industry. You're a big part of the industry's success and spreading the word about the benefits of a career in agriculture. So thank you so much for being here. Anything else you'd like to add about the industry and what it can do for students?
Well, I think the main thing is what we refer to as ag literacy, and I think it's important for consumers to be aware in these times when you can see anything on the internet. Yep. And part of it's true probably, but at the same time, it's very important, I think, that consumers recognize that those producers. We talked about farmers and ranchers in Oklahoma, and the misconception with corporate ag, and there are corporations involved in agriculture, but upwards of 95% of farms in Oklahoma and nationwide are family operated. Yeah. They may be large farms, but they're family owned and operated. And some of those families will form corporations just for tax purposes, but they are still family run, family operated. I think that's a misconception that people need to know about. Yeah. And the fact that those farmers and ranchers are out there, and whether it's 0 degrees or 10 below blowing snow, or it's 110 outside, they're in the midst of that and struggling with all sorts of issues, from markets to climate to weather to just policies that they have to deal with, all sorts of things. And I think it's important for us to recognize that the ag industry is what feeds us and clothes us, and I think we can never learn too much about that. Yeah.
Well, I think we may have sparked some interest. Let's hope so. I have learned a lot. Thank you so much, Scott. I think our listeners have learned a lot as well. If you want more information about FFA, ag education, and other CareerTech programs, all you got to do is visit the Oklahoma CareerTech website at okcareertech.org. And don't forget to follow us on social media. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. We hope you'll join us for our next episode of CareerTech Conversations. For Oklahoma CareerTech, I'm Russell Ray.